Story 1. In case people are interested, Public Broadcasting Service Passport is a great streaming service with a lot of material, and it costs about $5 a month. The fee goes directly to supporting the public broadcasting service. Story 2. Sad. The richest nation in the world should be improving services for its people, not removing them. Story 3. I'm glad my grandmother is gone. She supported children's education and public broadcasting all her life. I am so glad she does not have to see what is happening these days. Story 4. Makes me really sad. I grew up watching Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers, and I learned a lot from them. It is a shame that children will not have access to learn things they might otherwise miss due to inattentive parents or teachers. Story 5. I am waffling between. I tried so hard to stop this. Hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars. But I work 60 hours a week and I am so tired at 49. And I am not really sure if we are even worth saving at this point. Story 6. It has always been the case, but it is now unavoidably obvious. We all have to vote like our country depends on it. Story 7. Congress provides funding for the public broadcasting service, and former President Donald Trump does not have the authority to shut it down. If Congress allocates additional funds for the public broadcasting service, it would be illegal for Trump to continue pursuing this course of action. However, since some members of the Republican Party prioritize party interests over national interests, this situation is unlikely to change. At this point, it appears to be former President Trump before party and party before country. Story 8. Boils my blood. I have been a morning edition listener for more than 30 years. When I have time, I listen during the afternoon drive time. National Public Radio is not perfect, but it is the closest to non-biased and detailed reporting we have in this nation. Story 9. Nova, Frontline, Nature, American Experience, American Masters, even This Old House. Programming right-wing Trump supporters think is woke or liberal because it is educational. God forbid they actually open their small minds and learn and enlighten themselves. So frustrated. Story 10. I would like to think the public broadcasting service and National Public Radio will survive without it, perhaps even with more money provided by the public. I think some people are confusing the Corporation for Public Broadcasting shutting down with the idea that the Public Broadcasting Service and National Public Radio are immediately going to shut down as well. Story 11. And to think, for just a measly $500 million, some wealthy person who is not difficult, Buffett, Gates, and others, could give them that money and still have a large amount left over. Do I want the very rich paying for things like this? No. But when I consider everything that will be lost when they close their operations, as long as it is without any conditions attached, I would support this as a temporary measure. They could even say, sponsored by, which I imagine would probably upset Trump. Good. Story 12. This comment is brought to you by the letter I. It is another international embarrassment by the most incompetent, ignorant, and imbecilic administration in the history of our great country. Story 13. I doubled my public broadcasting service donation. I am very annoyed that public television and radio have been unfairly criticized for political purposes. These are valuable resources and people need the media they produce. The current administration, especially the president, cannot handle criticism, and by criticism I mean actual candid, objective evaluation. We need honest media. Frankly, the programs funded by this support, like Arthur and Sesame Street, are collateral damage as the president wages war on critical thinking. Story 14. The public hearing, the truth just cannot be allowed. If poor children can no longer learn to read, then it is just the cherry on top. Sick of all the winning yet make America great again. Story 15. I hate it. I was just scrolling and a Mr. Rogers clip played, and I broke down. We failed Big Bird and Mr. Rogers. It's a problem in the neighborhood. Story 16. We have many billionaires who could fix this problem with the equivalent of their lunch money. But here we are. Story 17. Back in the late 1960s, when National Public Radio and Public Broadcasting Service started, most of their funding came from the federal government through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I think it was 90%. Since the late 1990s and early 2000s, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting has been funding 10%. That is why there has been an increase in corporate sponsorship and advertisements at the start of programs. I did not like the change to 10% when it happened, thinking they would become just like every other commercial television and radio station, and I do not like advertisements of any kind. However, they have maintained quality programming for the most part. I think they will survive having to pick up the last 10%. I am in the Bay Area, so I doubt KQED is going to change anytime soon. The ones who will lose out are the rural stations that do not have the population to support them. But the same rural populations are also the ones that voted for Donald Trump, so I have no sympathy for them. Story 18: More fascism and censorship. The Republican Party wants to feed people only lies. This is another reason to impeach Donald Trump. Story 19: Corporate media will never lie to you. Story 20: Honestly, it is pretty crazy to think about. Public broadcasting service and national public radio have been a part of public life for so long. Losing federal funding would be a huge blow, especially for those who rely on those stations for more unbiased quality programming. It is not the kind of thing you can just replace easily with corporate media. Story 21: The United Kingdom's British Broadcasting Corporation is recognized as the finest news source in the world. Canada's Canadian Broadcasting Corporation and Australia's Australian Broadcasting Authority are close seconds: honest, unbiased, and open. The Voice of America and National Public Radio used to be ranked with those five. They reported former President Trump's lies and corruption honestly. They are paying the price. Trump is a criminal trying to live as an honest man. Story 22: We are now a deeply unserious nation. It is national self-destruction, and we are completely unable to stop it. Story 23: It is absolutely evil, and this wretched administration is intoxicated with power and needs to be removed. Story 24: Republicans know that an educated populace is the biggest threat to their existence. This makes perfect sense. It is the same reason they do everything they can to destroy all education. Story 25: I can guarantee that if he were still alive, the current administration would have attacked Fred Rogers for being woke. Story 26: It will return once this oppressive person is either impeached or leaves office at the end of their term. Story 27: I'm going to lose PBS Spacetime on YouTube. I love their content. I just hope their videos stay online. I strongly dislike the person in question. Edit and NPR Tiny Desk Concerts. However, he probably doesn't care as long as he has a child to harm. Story 28: A goddamn disgrace. These serve the public, and I have always viewed them as non-biased politically. Donald Trump and his administration should be ashamed. They are tearing apart the public-serving institutions one at a time. Story 29: It is a shallow mind's wet dream to shut down a fact-spewing entity like that. We cannot have facts and science when Project 25 is God's will. Story 30: I think I have not watched television at all in over a decade, but seriously, forget this place for that. Story 31: Way too many people here do not understand the difference between government-funded and government-run. We have the exact same issue north of the border. Story 32: Maybe if public broadcasting service and national public radio had more content that Donald Trump supporters liked, they would not have supported a candidate who wanted to cut their funding. Story 33: I am feeling numb at this point, but that one hurt. It felt like childhood being taken away, combined with distress over the continuous erosion of an informed society. I strongly oppose Donald Trump and all his supporters. Story 34: Honestly heartbreaking. Public broadcasting service taught me how to read before school did. Mr. Rogers, Reading Rainbow, even Nova, these were not just shows, they were lifelines for children whose parents could not afford private tutors or flashy streaming services. Cutting this off feels like turning our backs on free, accessible education and culture. Not everyone had cable, but everyone had public broadcasting service. Story 35: It is a travesty. National Public Radio has won numerous awards, including multiple Edward R. Murrow Awards, Peabody Awards, and DuPont Columbia Awards. For example, in 2024 alone, National Public Radio and its member stations won 43 National Edward R. Murrow Awards. In 2023, National Public Radio won 7 Gracie Awards, and member stations won 20. National Public Radio also won 8 Edward R. Murrow Awards in 2020. Additionally, National Public Radio has been recognized with multiple awards like the Online Journalism Awards and National Press Club Awards. Let us be clear, this is suppression of the press. Just as with the crushing of National Aeronautics and Space Administration climate science and the firing of heads of independent government agencies, this is an autocratic move. National Public Radio's news has maintained the highest level of journalistic standards. But that is not good for someone who insists the false narrative be the only narrative. National Public Radio is a great public investment. From educational content for children that did not promote processed foods at every turn, to incredible and historically accurate documentaries, to accurate unbiased news, they have lived up to their charter. But let us be clear, this is to eliminate any clear narrative to rural America. Rural America will find itself in a larger media desert with less variety of accurate sources of information. Metropolitan areas will be fine. Rural areas will be totally misinformed. Just as with the National Broadband Initiative, which was supposed to give rural America high-speed internet access at a low cost, blocked by the grand old party every single time, rural America will be brainwashed. With a lack of diverse narratives to compare and contrast, they will be captive to a media monoculture based on misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. Story 36. This is a non-issue for National Public Radio. They received less than 1% of their funding from the federal government. It is a much bigger deal for the Public Broadcasting Service, which received 15% of their funding from the federal government. Public Broadcasting Service viewers will have to increase their contributions by 17.6% to cover the difference. Story 37. It's sad but exactly what I expected, and sadly not the worst thing happening. We have 1,262 days left of this nonsense. Story 38. It makes me think of when I saw someone say that if members of the Republican Party today heard about the concept of libraries for the first time, they would shut them down and call it socialism. Libraries would not exist if members of the Republican Party had their way. Story 39. I dislike everything about this. The continued defunding of anything that dares to not honor the President of the United States. Story 40. I do not know if it matters what I think. However, if it does happen and I have the opportunity to visit the White House as a tourist, I will probably lose control of my bowels in the ballroom. Story 41. America chose racism over Mr. Rogers. We have watched for 24 years, and now the United States government has become the United States company. I do not support this government, whether left or right, anymore until I see actual work done for the citizens. If we say, well, one party keeps blocking it, then that is what America voted for, which means I will continue to not support the government. Story 42. It makes me so sad. Like most people, I thought it was untouchable and would be here forever. I am glad Mr. Rogers and Bob Ross are not here to see it. Story 43. I think it's great. The nation should focus on getting information to its people. The president, who is an honest and wonderful man, will tell us everything we need to know. This money will be better spent with our leaders. Only when their cups run over do we deserve to lick the ground to quench our thirst. Keep consuming, stay complacent. America is great again. Story 44. Yet it is amazing they find millions for military parades and converting bribed Boeing 747 aircraft. Dictators dictate. Story 45. A very dark day in America. This is exactly how dictators seize power. Eliminate free press, eliminate opposition parties, eliminate intellectual and secular learning in favor of a theocratic, intolerant movement, remove sources of information. We are watching democracy disappear, and a frightening number of Americans are totally happy about it. They are the ones who will be most affected. Just pathetic. Story 46. I'm troubled. They fund the coverage of a lot of news that is not profitable for corporate outlets. It is going to leave the best of us more ignorant. Story 47. I lost my job at a public media station because of this. I feel angry and frustrated. I loved that job, and it was taken from me because the former president cannot handle criticism. This country is a joke. Story 48. They gave so much to me. It is time I gave back. This has always been for us, by us. Let us take back power. Story 49. It is petty and absurd to me that our country is being run by people who hate America, Americans, and all the good this country has done for our global partners and here at home. Yes, we have gone a bit off the path, but we have done nothing to merit the destruction of every tenet we have lived by and expounded upon for 2 centuries. You do not destroy that out of love, honor, or duty. You do not destroy it to make things better. You do not care if it gets better or not. You burn the field, salt the earth, and walk away. You do that out of contempt and hate. You ruin everything that represents an opportunity for betterment in education, skill acquisition, escape from generational poverty, healthcare, and you leave the people with nothing. Because you hate everything America is and stands for. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting brought things into our lives of great beauty and substance. It brought us these things with no agenda other than enrichment for its own sake. And these monstrous, ugly thugs destroyed it for no reason good enough. Story 50. It is the end of an era. What happens to all of those old episodes of Mr. Rogers that are played repeatedly? He has decades of shows. Story 51. It is a shame. They are much better than the for-profit media. People are already poorly informed, and this will make things even worse. Story 52. The amount of damage this administration is doing is generational. I used to think we would need a 2-term Democratic president and control of both houses just to reverse the previous 4 years of damage. Now I am not sure that is even enough. Story 53. I am torn. In theory, I do not want state-funded media or press. I am a progressive, but it always felt counterintuitive to me. It is not free press when it is funded by the state. However, on the other hand, I love the educational children's programming. Story 54. South Carolina Public Television and Radio do not just air Sesame Street and Downton Abbey. We provide statewide weather alerts during hurricanes and broadcast the State of the State speeches for Republican governors who have generally tried to shut us down. Nikki Haley said to shut us down while we were broadcasting her live State of the State address. We also help stream legislative meetings for transparency. Story 55. I think our country has enough wealthy individuals that a small group of them could fund the public broadcasting service through large donations or grants for years to come. It is a shame no one has stepped up yet. Story 56. In the history of humanity, no words have ever been spoken that adequately describe the hatred I have for every single one of these feckless individuals, including establishment Democrats for turning their noses up at the coalition bloc of voters who would have at least delayed this issue for 4 years. But it was more important to them to enable a genocidal sociopath to harm children than to lift a finger in the interest of averting this scenario. Story 57. Mr. Rogers is rolling in his grave right now. This is vile. Meanwhile, roughly 20% of the population here is supporting all of this, while another 20% engages in performative behavior and criticizes anyone trying to effect real change. America is doomed. Edited to add. The other 60% are too busy working 3 or 4 jobs just to meet the minimum standard for life in this difficult situation. This is by design. They keep us too busy and too tired to fight back because they know that the minute the general public realizes they are the power in this country, it is over for this regime. Story 58. The networks will be fine, but local stations, especially in rural and remote parts of the country, are struggling. If you look at public media as an ecosystem, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting was a critical part. Even though its grants did not make up the majority of the budget of the Public Broadcasting Service or National Public Radio, it provided essential seed money to the stations, helping them generate much greater private support. In an era where local news is consolidating and disappearing, these stations are in some cases the only quality source for local news and information, including disaster awareness. The move aligns with other attacks by the administration on the free press, including the extortion of Paramount and Skydance, the sidelining of the Associated Press, and the dismantling of the United States Agency for Global Media and its grantees. Story 59. Incredibly disappointed and sad. The wealthiest nation in the history of the world decided that the wealthiest among us needed more, so the rest of us lost out. Story 60. If it provides a quality product that captures attention, Advertisers will be happy to support it with advertising revenue. Story 61. I think it goes a long way toward achieving the goal of creating an electorate too uninformed to vote in their own best interest. Story 62. I do not understand why they are shutting down without trying to secure other funding for the 15% they are losing. Why are they just giving up? Story 63. I know I am going to donate to both. I rarely use either of them, but they are important institutions that we need to support. Story 64. Former police officer and advocate. Survivor. The only way to get people to vote against themselves is to keep them uneducated or undereducated. Just look at how many have Wi-Fi access and still believe false information. They are not a political party. It is a global trafficking network hiding behind religion and politics. It is completely illogical that Epstein and Maxwell were convicted, yet none of their clients have even come close to arrest. Friend of pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Former President Donald Trump reduced efforts to combat human trafficking. All of this is about ethnic cleansing and the reference to the year 1776. Homegrown. Story 65. This news, when it first came out, prompted me to get public broadcasting service passport, as I realized I am in the greater Boston housing neighborhood. Story 66. I am extremely disappointed. I do not have much money but have started monthly donations to my local public broadcasting service and national public radio stations. Story 67. Trump is a small man. Those who support him have a philosophical foundation built on hate because they are not open to considering other perspectives. Anyone who identifies as a Republican is expressing hateful views. If you disapprove of what Trump and his supporters are doing, you should not identify as a Republican. Identifying as a Republican implies either complicity or ignorance of the facts. Both are unacceptable. Story 68. We are disassembling many components of this country that benefit numerous people. I do not know how we will put the pieces back together if Democrats take control again. Story 69. Canadian here. I'm not sure how they can go on at the same pace. I'm on vacation this week, so I went down to the Fundy Coast, which is really close to the Maine/New Brunswick border. I was trying to find radio stations, and Maine Public Radio was doing a telethon asking for donations, saying they just finished their fiscal year and are losing $5 million over 2 years. That's a pretty rural area to have less local news coverage. It's sad. I've enjoyed listening to perspectives from across the border sometimes. Story 70. What was the annual run rate? I believe any billionaire who wanted to do good could fund it indefinitely. Story 71. Just another in a long line of horrors that we will have to endure for the next approximately 3.5 years. This is going to be one long, sad, I told you so. Story 72. I think it is very bad. I hope they take strong action against Donald Trump from now on. They have no reason to worry about what he thinks. Story 73. Really angry. It is much harder to build things than to destroy them. We will be putting back the pieces of the things this person broke for the rest of my lifetime. Story 74. National Public Radio will mostly be unaffected as they get just 1% of their funding from the federal government, but the public broadcasting service will be affected much worse because they get 20% of their funding from the federal government. They are apparently even considering shutting down PBS Kids. I am not very worried about National Public Radio, but the public broadcasting service concerns me. Story 75. It is truly awful. Public broadcasting service was such an important part of growing up, and it makes me really sad that my children will lose it in their lifetime. My son loves Wild Kratts and watches it every single day. He has learned a lot from it. Losing it is wrong, pointless, and cruel. Story 76. Trump likes to shut down anything that benefits the general public. Wireless tax filing, clean air, clean water, worker protections, Social Security, healthcare, and planes not falling out of the sky or colliding. He ignores global warming-caused hurricanes and storms, product safety, food safety, soil or aquifer destruction, and child safety. Everything else must be God's will or out of his control, of course. Story 77. The primary purpose of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting was to disburse public grants. It supported the production of quality programming for the nation, but that was essentially the full story. With no more national grants, it could either find an excuse to exist by using the limited funds from state and local government support for public broadcasting or step aside to allow individual broadcast outlets to benefit directly from whatever lawmakers provide. It is not ideal, but once the federal funding has ended, this outcome becomes inevitable from the perspective of those who want to maximize the remaining support for listener-funded broadcast media. Story 78. I did watch Public Broadcasting Service Kids a lot as a kid. Even though I did not watch it much during my later years, it is unfortunate that it is going to be canceled. Story 79. Despite lawmakers citing political bias to justify cuts, polling shows Public Broadcasting Service and National Public Radio remain some of the most trusted media institutions in the United States. A Harris poll found 66% of adults support federal public media funding, including 58% of Republicans. Story 80. My understanding is that the Public Broadcasting Service receives 15% of its total budget from the federal government. Some aspects of the Public Broadcasting Service and National Public Radio will be hit harder. In particular, rural stations and headquarters functions will be severely cut, possibly to operational death. All of these will survive the assault. We just need to vote out these miscreants. Story 81. They will not shut down. 10 to 15% of their funding comes from the federal government. They will need to tighten up, but the Public Broadcasting Service is mostly funded by viewers like you. Story 82. This is what the majority wants. It is sad that more than half the country wants to be ruled by a dictator. Story 83. I noticed a subtle but telling change on our national public radio station recently. Instead of reporting on various social justice issues, they have started reporting on local crime incidents. Why were they not doing this all along? Story 84. National Public Radio receives $1 billion a year. About half of that amount goes to content creators and stations. Whether you love public media or not, that is too much overhead. Story 85. It is a travesty. Aside from maybe the Vandals, Visigoths, and Mongols, a culture is rarely remembered by future civilizations for how destructive it was. We remember cultures for the art they produced. We measure them by how concerned they were for society as a whole. The Romans built roads and aqueducts, amazing architecture and sculpture. The Greeks made enormous developments in art, science, and philosophy. Donald Trump ended the federal government's efforts to educate people. From the Public Broadcasting Service to the Department of Education to the United States Agency for International Development, everything positive that America had done for itself and the world meant nothing to him. He is a mirror image of the worst our culture has produced. We will be remembered for having chosen a narcissistic oaf as our leader. It is not only that we are doomed, we brought it on ourselves. Story 86. They are destroying everything that is good, literally incinerating foreign aid supplies. That being said, we have a midterm. Please vote. Story 87. It is really important to realize that the Public Broadcasting Service is stepping in to fill the shoes. Yes, it is fascist insanity, but important. Story 88. Sell advertisements and compete. If they are as popular as many think, they should have no problem funding their programming. Story 89. Public Broadcasting Service has been coasting on the reputation of Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers for far too long. The government should not be in the business of running a television network. I do not like much of what Donald Trump does, but this one is fine with me. Story 90. I am about to lose my job of the past 18 years, and the public is about to lose a critical educational service that made it possible for me to get through school and has been in place for the past 60 years. This is demoralizing. Story 91. This is a good thing, for both practical and principled reasons. This will be an unpopular opinion on Reddit. State-owned media such as Pravda is generally a bad idea. Would you want tax dollars spent showing reruns of The Apprentice? Elections have consequences. Donald Trump and Elon Musk had a point that they should not spend money they do not have. Without the nonprofit structure's limitations, these popular shows can be self-funding through licensing deals, with a few popular ones supporting the less commercial projects. Nobody is saying to erase all of Reverend Fred Rogers. There has been a communications revolution since 1969. There is no shortage of quality programming. But, as usual, once a government project gets started, it grows often like a cancer, even long after the initial need has gone away. Story 92. If the programming is so important, why can't it stand on its own? What about all these millionaires like Nancy Pelosi, Elizabeth Warren, Chuck Schumer, John Fetterman, Jasmine Crockett, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? You get the idea. Everybody wants to depend on the government. Story 93C. Now National Public Radio and Public Broadcasting Service do not have to be funded by right-wing white supremacist dollars. Finally, they can thrive from the generosity of the left. Story 94. People who complain about this did not donate during the last fundraiser. There are too many media options now. The government should not own or promote any media anymore. Story 95. For many years, they produced high-quality programs with good depth by many dedicated professionals. There is great value in that. However, if there was any political component in what they covered, it always favored the left and was overwhelmingly critical of roughly half the voters who were forced to pay for it. It is impossible for me to see how a fair-minded, intelligent person could think otherwise. But then, I am odd as I consume information from both sides. Because of this, they let people down and helped us get terrible leaders like Donald Trump and Joseph Biden. By demonizing one side, but in a very polished way, they, in a small way, drove out those who eventually put Trump and a group of extremists in power and helped elect other incompetent leaders on the left. I think it is good if this group gets shut down. It is a statement that if you use public money, you should at least try to represent both sides fairly. But I am not naive. People are tribal and largely incapable of understanding the other side, and as social media grows, it will only get worse. This subreddit is a great example. So, if anything, the complete ignorance of the other side will only increase. That was a bit of a speech. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.